his own life, that he was restarting over in Texas.
He also found his voice along the way.
He started rapping about his trials and, things he's been through.
He was trying to pursue that as maybe a career.
A new love seemed to be a signal that the tides had finally turned.
They got to know each other really well.
He was happy. I always wanted to bring her around.
Until rough waters threatened to upend his life again.
This was a very unique and different storm. It was powerful, and it kept on going inland.
It was crazy. He just went silent.
Was this another missing person lost in Hurricane Harvey?
The evidence would reveal something far more ominous.
When I seen the news, I got sick to my stomach, physically ill.
What better way to make someone disappear than in the midst of a hurricane?
August 18th, 2017. It's Friday evening in Baytown, Texas, a blue-collar town on the Houston Shipping Channel.
It's a large port area where you're going to have a lot of cargo and shipping, the various refineries or the various plastic companies.
That's pretty much the lifeblood of the town for many years.
As people are getting off of work from Baytown's refineries and chemical plants, they keep a watchful eye on the news.
Hurricane Harvey was making its way across the Caribbean at that point and threatening to turn towards Texas.
The storm is pretty much the number one thing on people's minds because they've seen what storms can do here.
This was 9 years just after Hurricane Ike that caused billions in damage and killed dozens. So it was pretty understandable why people were nervous.
However, even with the threat of a hurricane, one Baytown woman has a more urgent matter. A little after 6 p.m., 30-year-old Sierra Sutton arrives at the Baytown police station to report that her boyfriend, 32-year-old Stephen Coleman, has been missing since Wednesday.
It was a little past 7 p.m. when he left, and he was only supposed to be gone for a little while.
She said he just got up and walked out the door, and she said that was the last time she saw him.
He was supposed to meet his daughter that night.
Have you talked to her, the daughter?
Called her mother, but they haven't seen her.
Sierra said she also called several of Stephen's friends who hadn't heard from him either.
Sierra claims that it's unlike Stephen to not be in touch with his friends and family.
I knew something wasn't right with Stephen when I didn't hear from him because we would talk all the time.
If he home, he gonna call. Something just didn't add up.
Get it? I understand.
Louisiana native Stephen Coleman had come to Texas in 2005, blown there by a different storm.
When Hurricane Katrina hit the New Orleans area, it was devastating. And Stephen, he was one of over 200,000 people who fled Louisiana and then settled in Houston, Texas.
Most of the people fleeing Katrina landed in the Houston area with little money and spent years struggling to rebuild their lives.
Stephen was no exception.
He needed to make some money. He needed a couple of dollars in his pocket because he was trying to get somewhere to stay.
He was looking for a job.
The problem was, he had a few strikes against him.
Stephen had grown up in one of the toughest areas in New Orleans and had gotten into some trouble.
He went to jail for just being in the streets.
He had a few minor offenses on his record, like misdemeanor drug possession and carrying a handgun without a license.
But Stephen refused to let his past define him.
He had a great heart, great sense of humor. He was just a good person.
Here's a guy who maybe had a little bit of a past. He's trying to turn it around, trying to look for a better future like we all do.
After months of struggling, Stephen managed to find a place for himself in Baytown, a bustling suburb of Houston.
Baytown is right on the coast of Galveston Bay. It's about half an hour from downtown Houston, and it's got big business in oil refining and steel manufacturing.
He worked at a chemical plant, and he was a hard worker.
The more he got into it, the better he got. Like, he was seeing his capabilities. So he went from the rookie to the supervisor.
However, for all Steven's dedication and success at his job, music was his true passion.
And this one right here, epic.
He had made this rap CD and was trying to pursue that as maybe a career.
Steven loved his music. He was really good at his craft.
His music was like a way to express a lot of stuff that we was going through.
Let me show you how I can hit the block broke and get $1 million right now, right? Got 100 hustles.
It was so realistic. It was raw. He was gifted. Like, people would tell him, man, hey, man, this song, man, I listen to this song, bro. And, you know, it had me feeling like this. It made me believe, and he gave me hope.
Raw, real, and full of hope, Steven was a rising star in both the Houston rap scene and back home in New Orleans.
He had a lot of fans from Facebook and stuff like that.
One of those fans was Sierra. Once in Baytown, Sierra and Steven started building their life together.
She went the extra mile for him, help him, support him, you know, kind of take some of the pressure off him.
And with Sierra by his side, Steven could focus on taking his musical career to the next level.
He wanted to get his music out more. He wanted to do a bunch of shows. He wanted to try to sign to a label.
But this rising star has now faded from view. In mid-August of 2017, Sierra Sutton claims Steven has been missing for the last 2 days.
He was only supposed to be gone for a little while.
And with an impending disaster approaching off the coast of Baytown, his girlfriend believes something worse may have already happened to Steven.
I'm afraid it's because of some of the things that he used to be into.
What do you mean by that? What kind of things?
Some of the people he used to run with, they were trouble.
In the summer of 2017, with his #1 fan, Sierra Sutton, at his side, and his rap career on the rise, it looked as if there were no limits for Steven Coleman.
He was always in a good space. Every day he woke up with something on his mind. Every day he's setting goals, different plans.
He was really good at what he did, but he also worked as well. So he was rapping and working. If it wasn't at work, he was at the studio.
But now, Sierra has just gone to the police and reported that she hasn't seen or heard from Steven in 48 hours.
She goes to the cops and says she's missing. They take her statements and get all the information from her.
According to Sierra, with Hurricane Harvey fast approaching, Steven had left their apartment on Wednesday night to check on his daughter from a previous relationship.
She lives with her mama.
Do you know the mother's name?
Kimberly Wiley.
Him and his baby mama, they started talking to each other, and they had got back cool, and, you know, he started going over.
Kimberly and Steven's daughter had moved to the Houston area as well after Katrina, so this was perfect for Steven to be able to see his daughter on a regular basis.
He was trying to be there and help with the daughter.
But that Wednesday night, Steven never showed up to see his daughter.
How you know that?
Because I asked her.
Kimberly, correct?
Yeah, I called her when I couldn't get a hold of Steven.
Exes are often considered persons of interest, so detectives were suspicious of Kimberly.
However, Sierra offers up a different possibility.
In the missing person report that Sierra filed, she volunteers some theories that Steven went back to his old ways, and he was back amongst a rough crowd.
Some of the people he used to run around with, they were trouble.
Is he doing anything illegal now?
Not that I know of.
With Sierra offering little in the way of names, detectives can hardly start to investigate anyone specific. But Sierra does reveal one clue that indicates something nefarious may have happened to Stephen.
What makes you think that?
Both his cars are still in the parking lot.
He was a car person. He had 2 cars. He had just gotten a new Jaguar. He loved that car.
That right there raised red flags. Why would he just walk off somewhere without even taking his vehicle?
He just loved his car. He did not want to leave his car behind. This dude don't even want to ride with me in my car to go to the corner store.
I'm just really worried about him.
I get it. Understand. We'll do everything we can, ma'am.
Once they finish filling out the missing persons report, detectives issue a be on the lookout for Stephen.
We cannot just put everything on hold just because there's a hurricane coming.
They also do a background check on Stephen, but find nothing to indicate he was associating with criminals, nor that he was a hardened criminal.
There were a few minor charges in his past, but there was nothing recent.
He was not somebody who looked for trouble. He did not seem like a bad guy at all.
With his background and apparent dead end, detectives subpoena his cell phone and financial records.
They started to check his bank account and they started to kind of backtrack.
Any activity on Stephen's debit and credit cards would have left a trail that detectives could trace.
While waiting to hear back from Stephen's bank and cell phone provider, detectives pay a visit to the apartment complex he and Sierra call home.
The initial canvas showed his cars are there.
Detectives didn't find any trace of blood or anything around the cars to indicate foul play.
Canvassing the apartment complex also fails to produce any leads.
They had a recent picture of Stephen with a missing persons flyer. Nobody really ever heard of any kind of disturbances or fights that they shared with the detectives and the police officers. So it didn't look like anything really significant would have gone on in the apartment complex.
The detective's next move is questioning Kimberly Wiley, Stephen's ex and mother to his 8-year-old daughter.
Sierra told detectives that she had talked to Kimberly, and neither she nor her daughter had heard from Stephen.
When detectives meet with Kimberly at the Baytown Police Department, her story seems to line up with Sierra's.
Kimberly, when was the last time you spoke to Stephen?
Monday afternoon.
But you were supposed to see him on Wednesday, is that right?
That was the plan. He was supposed to come by to see our daughter.
Kimberly told them the same thing Sierra did, that Stephen was supposed to come see his daughter on Wednesday night.
However, Kimberly claims that once Wednesday rolled around, she never heard from Stephen, so she made other plans.
What were you doing?
I was with a friend.
To detectives, Kimberly's answers seem evasive. Could she be denying seeing Stephen on Wednesday because something more sinister had happened?
Thank you for coming in.
Her story was a little unconvincing, but detectives weren't even sure if anything had happened to Stephen at this point.
They really needed his phone records to give them some sort of lead.
Later that afternoon, detectives receive Stephen's phone records, and it appears Kimberly is telling the truth. Stephen hadn't even called her on Wednesday. However, there is one final outgoing call on Stephen's records that could give them a new suspect.
Who was the last person that we know Stephen spoke to? A woman named Rose.
Rose Lawrence?
Yes. There was a lot of fear in the community.
He robbed people, killed people, carjacked people.
The more they showed it on TV, the madder young people got.
All new Sins of the City, tomorrow at 9 on TV One.
When I last talked to Stephen, we were talking about getting together, going out, and having fun like we always do. So when I found out Stephen was missing, It was crazy. I tried to contact him. I tried to FaceTime him. I tried to messenger him. No answer. He just went silent.
While clouds from Hurricane Harvey roll in over the Texas coast, detectives investigating the disappearance of Stephen Coleman have just gotten their first lead in the case.
According to Stephen's phone records, the last person that he spoke to before he disappeared was a woman named Rose Lawrence.
With the window of opportunity to find Stephen Coleman narrowing, interviewing the last person who had contact with him could be the break detectives need.
Rose Lawrence?
Yes?
We understand you're friends with Stephen Coleman.
Yeah? Why?
I need to ask you a few questions about him.
She readily admits she knows Stephen very well. They were very close.
When you say close, what exactly do you mean?
That kind of statement usually makes detectives wonder, is it just a friendly relationship, or could they be looking at a love triangle?
We're just friends. I've known Stephen for years. He'd come by from time to time and we'd hang out, talk, you know?
Rose explains that on the Wednesday Stephen disappeared, he was supposed to stop by on his way to see his daughter, but he never arrived.
He didn't show?
No.
Rose said she wasn't worried about it because between his job, his music, his girlfriend, and his daughter, Stephen was very busy. She just thought something had come up.
It did seem strange. When I called him the next day, he never answered or returned my call.
She never heard from him. That was the last conversation she ever had with him.
When you hear from Stephen, let him know we're trying to find him.
I will. I just hope he's okay.
Detectives aren't sure if Rose is telling them the whole story. So now the question becomes, did Sierra Sutton know about Rose and Stephen's friendship?
Stephen's girlfriend, Sierra, hadn't said anything to detectives about him going over to Rose's on the night he disappeared.
Stephen might have been keeping Rose a secret because there was something more going on between them.
Detectives sense the potential for a love triangle turned vengeful. But which woman had been scorned? Sierra Sutton or Rose Lawrence? And is Stephen Coleman still alive? On Sunday, 2 days after Sierra reported Stephen missing, detectives reach out to his family in hopes of learning more.
They make a phone call back to Louisiana to Stephen's mom.
She was very upset to hear about Stephen being reported missing.
They told her Sierra had filed the report on Friday.
Unfortunately, Stephen's mother has little insight on her son's relationship with Sierra.
She said she didn't know all that much about Stephen's life in Baytown.
However, she does reveal that she too has had trouble reaching him over the past several days.
Stephen's mom told detectives that she last heard from Stephen 5 days ago.
Now it's not only his girlfriend who hasn't had contact with him, it's his mother too.
When detectives get in touch with several of Stephen's Houston area friends, they share the same fears.
Something just didn't add up. He might go missing maybe a day or two. That was known. But you talk to him a day, you probably don't talk to him maybe, if not the next day, the following.
Asked if Stephen has any enemies, his friends claim the answer is unequivocally no.
People would look up to him. He was a very giving person and didn't mind helping others.
He's definitely a guy that you will want in your life. He'll uplift you, and he'll never let you down.
However, Stephen's friends also admit that he wasn't perfect, and they reveal some details about him that lend credence to detectives' earlier suspicions.
He did have a penchant for having a lot of women.
Stephen's friends told police that he was never really satisfied with having just one girlfriend.
According to his friends, Stephen's refusal to stay monogamous eventually led to issues with Sierra.
Apparently Sierra has suspected him of sleeping around.
She definitely got jealous.
According to Steven's friends, not only was Steven seeing other women, he talked about ending his relationship with Ciara.
He just didn't feel that he wanted to be with her anymore. And so he was gonna break up with her.
However, while Steven had no intention of settling down, he wasn't about to put Ciara on the street.
It was a difficult situation for him to try to get Ciara out because, number one, she had a daughter.
And she didn't have nowhere to go. She had nobody there.
Does the impending breakup suggest that Ciara had something to do with Steven's disappearance?
It's certainly a good motive to make somebody disappear.
Or was there some other explanation for why no one's heard from Steven Coleman?
In an investigation, if you leave one stone unturned, well, that's going to be the stone that you should have looked at.
And on August 22nd, detectives will get their answer.
4 days after Steven disappeared, some workers at the county landfill were burying the day's haul when something unusual happened.
It's a landfill. Heaps and mounds of garbage. The smell, the stench in the air.
But it's not just the stench of garbage that's in the air.
Oh! What is it that they see? The torso of a human body.
On August 22nd, 4 days after Steven Coleman's girlfriend, Ciara Sutton, reported him missing, workers at a landfill just outside of Baytown, Texas, have just made a gruesome discovery.
As they were pushing dirt over the garbage, they saw what appeared to be a dismembered body.
The only thing they found was the torso. That's it. They find nothing else.
Oh, y'all do I call 911?
When detectives investigating Steven Coleman's disappearance receive information that a black male has been found, they immediately make their way to the scene. But there is nothing to help identify the body on site.
It's just a portion of a body. There's no head. There's no way to identify really who it is.
It was also not really clear to detectives how the man died.
Detectives are looking at this decomposing torso. It's been dismembered, it's been mutilated.
Have the remains of Steven Coleman been found?
But there is a science to landfills.
As the coroner's crew removes the torso for autopsy and identity testing, detectives wait for confirmation before informing Steven's family in New Orleans.
For a family that is already concerned about a loved one being missing, to have to go inform a family that their loved one is dead, that is emotional enough. But then to have to, on top of that, say, here's the condition we found your loved one in, to have to go tell the family that is just horrific.
But when the gruesome discovery makes the local news, family and friends of Steven Coleman fear the worst.
When I seen the news, I got sick to my stomach. Physically ill. I could not believe what I just saw on TV. It was just crazy. And everyone that knows him pretty much felt the same thing.
I was hoping that what they found wasn't him. You know, I was hoping that he was just hiding somewhere, ducked off somebody, doing his thing.
With the strong belief they've located the body of Steven Coleman, detectives believe their next step is to follow up with the girlfriend who reported him missing, Ciara Sutton.
They contact Ciara, say they have a huge development in the case of Steven, and they need to discuss some very important things with her, and they ask her to come down and talk, and she says, yep, I'll come down.
But now Ciara is the one who's disappeared, and the timing seems a little too perfect. On August 23rd, with Hurricane Harvey's impending landfall, the governor declares a state of emergency, sending South Texas into a frenzy.
Could Ciara be fleeing the storm? The detectives just weren't sure.
She's off the grid. The detectives, they can't get a hold of Ciara.
However, even as detectives are trying to find Ciara, they finally hear back from Steven's bank. and find a promising lead.
His credit cards were used at a local store here in Baytown.
There was a $48 charge at around 8 on Thursday morning, which would have been after he disappeared.
This card should be with him, and now it's being used during the same time that he is missing.
When detectives contact the store, management agrees to send them a list of everything that was purchased. A mattress pad, rope, and duct tape.
The receipt listed items that detectives say look like things to dispose of his body.
Later that afternoon, detectives also received the surveillance video of the transaction.
They were looking for it. Who's on the video? Who was there using Stephen's card?
It makes no sense for him just to walk off and all of a sudden just go buy a bunch of items like duct tape, rope. What use would he have for any of that?
As the detectives suspected, it wasn't Stephen.
They're clearly able to see a woman making a purchase.
For what it appears, it looks like Sierra.
Detectives investigating the death of aspiring rapper Stephen Coleman have just found store security video that appears to implicate his girlfriend, Sierra Sutton.
The video shows Sierra using Stephen's credit card and buying items that detectives say look like things to dispose of his body.
There was receipts on this as well, and this is after, of course, he disappeared.
Detectives have been trying to get in touch with Sierra, but with Hurricane Harvey approaching rapidly, they have been unable to reach her.
It's been all over the news that police believe they found Stephen's dismembered remains in a local landfill.
There was also this possibility that Sierra had left town, at least temporarily, until things calmed down. There were a lot of people who sought shelter elsewhere.
With Sierra in the wind, detectives get a warrant to search the apartment she shared with Stephen.
The store video and the remains from the landfill were enough to give them probable cause.
They have a torso. There's gotta be some kind of evidence somewhere.
Sierra Sutton, Baytown Police. Baytown Police.
They got that search warrant. And they execute the search warrant. Although they couldn't find Sierra.
You're not gonna find her.
What do you mean?
She moved.
After they find this torso in the landfill, they go back to her place, and of course they find out she's not there. She's left.
She moved?
Yeah, like 3 or 4 days ago.
Detectives contact the complex manager, who lets them in the apartment.
Inside the apartment was essentially empty.
Definitely looks like she moved out.
She didn't have no money, so she went to selling the furniture to help her get some money to get back to New Orleans. She got some guys to help her.
You smell that?
There's a nice, fresh smell. To the naked eye, it seems like it's a clean apartment.
Let's get CSI in here. Can we get a luminol test here?
The detectives bring their crime scene unit in, and they use something what's called luminol.
When you spray luminol on a surface, it reacts to organic substances like blood, even if the surface has been cleaned and the traces are invisible to the human eye.
The luminol test doesn't reveal anything in the living room, but in the bedroom, it's a different story.
Once they sprayed the luminol and turned on the black light, it lit up on top of and right next to the bed. There were big smears that looked like someone had tried to clean up a lot of blood.
As a result of this luminol, what looks like a peaceful, serene apartment, under the proper light is a gruesome, bloody murder scene.
Of course, right then and there, they put 2 and 2 together and realized that it's a very strong likelihood that Sierra has something to do with this.
Before detectives can track Sierra down to make an arrest, Hurricane Harvey finally comes ashore on the Texas coast.
This was a very unique and different storm.
Rather than move inland, the storm essentially stalled out over the Houston area.
You had your typical storm surge, but a massive amount of rainfall. The rain kept on coming. This went on for over 5 days of straight rain. Picture torrential downpours for 5 straight days. So while all of Houston was underwater, Baytown, in particularly, was being swallowed up. Boats were being shipped inland, houses, water up to the rooftops.
Baytown police must now drop everything to focus on the crisis at hand, leaving Sierra Sutton on the run.
They're having to deal with the recovery process and organizing all that.
Hundreds of people were trapped by those floodwaters or turned up missing.
People were looking for their loved ones in the midst of this storm.
But when the floodwaters recede, will it be too late to bring Sierra to justice?
I was praying that they would find her because she needed to pay for what she did.
While the Houston area is still tackling the cleanup weeks after Harvey had blown through, detectives assigned to Stephen Coleman's murder get an unexpected call in mid-September.
Homicide.
Hi. It's a woman from Louisiana. She tells detectives she knows Sierra Sutton.
She obviously had a lot of friends out there in Louisiana, friends she trusted.
But was Sierra's trust mistaken?
I know who killed Stephen Coleman.
Police in Baytown, Texas, have just received information that could close the case on Stephen Coleman's homicide.
Suddenly, there's a phone call from Sarah's friend named Brittany.
Brittany confirmed that Sierra was hiding out in New Orleans, staying with a mutual friend.
She went to her best friend. She was trying to get them to help her and to hide her.
And detectives are pretty confident they know what she's hiding from.
I know who killed Stephen Coleman.
Brittany couldn't deal with the secrecy, so she called police in Baytown.
Having already pegged Sierra as Stephen's killer, detectives ask Brittany to share more details.
I want you to know how much we appreciate you calling and talking to us.
I would have called sooner, but I didn't want to believe it at first.
What she hears out of Sierra's lips disgusted her, made her sick, could not believe that another human being could do this to somebody that she supposedly loved.
The beginning of Brittany's story fits with what detectives have already heard from Stephen's friends.
She said that he'd been acting like he wanted her to move out.
She believed he was seeing somebody else. So their relationship was rocky.
And according to Brittany, Sierra said the tension between her and Stephen came to a head the day he disappeared.
She had a temper, and she did not take it lightly if someone was cheating on her.
You don't do that to me.
Look, if you don't like it, maybe you should go back home.
And it got to the point to where it was like, all right, go back to New Orleans. She started to see that he was really serious. I know you know, and I'm telling you, that's what I'm doing.
But according to her friend Brittany, Sierra couldn't accept that.
The jealousy got to her so much where she just had enough, and so she decided that this is the only way out, to take him out.
I guess it came to a point like, if she can't have him, nobody can.
Next, Brittany says Sierra retrieved a gun from the closet and crept quietly back into the bedroom while Stephen was sleeping.
There was no argument, no fear for her own safety, nothing like that. Stephen was peacefully sleeping.
She shot him in the head.
Brittany said she was already shocked by the information Sierra told her. But what Sierra said next disgusted her to her core.
Sierra realizes she's too weak to carry the body.
So she reasons that there's only one way that she can get rid of the body, and that is to get a machete.
She told me she just chopped him up.
chops off the head, cuts off the arms. She cuts off the legs.
Sierra told Brittany it took her all night to dismember Stephen.
When this went on, Sierra's own child is in the next room.
Early the next morning, she went to the store and bought supplies.
She bought duct tape, rope, and garbage bags to wrap up the body.
Then she quietly disposed of the evidence.
She decided to wrap each piece up, put it in the car, and drive around Baytown to different dumpsters.
They get picked up, they get brought to the landfill, and ultimately that is where the torso's found.
After cleaning up the apartment and disposing of the body, Sierra takes one final step.
How may we help you?
She did go to the police and report Stephen missing, which obviously was a tactic to try to throw people off for what she had done.
But now the detectives know everything.
Why Sierra would tell her friends this, maybe it was something that did get on her conscience somewhat, but she just had to tell somebody.
She really thought that they was gonna help, but she really scared them.
Thank you.
Brittany's able to share other people who may possibly know about what took place. And so all these people were contacted, and all of them readily came forward.
Coupled with the evidence detectives already have, it's more than enough for an arrest warrant.
Then, with the help of local police, detectives took Sierra into custody at a relative's house in suburban New Orleans.
When detectives bring Sierra back to Texas and get her into an interrogation room, she refuses to admit that she's done anything wrong.
I told you already what happened. No, you're not going to be honest with us and you're going to stay with that lame story. That's fine. That's up to you. You're still charged. I mean, I don't have anything else to say to you guys.
Sierra at one point even claimed that it was strange men who came into the apartment and killed Stephen, and that they had threatened to hurt her too if she snitched.
2 people came into the house. They were disguised, and they told me to go into the bathroom and shut the door. And I heard a gunshot, and they told me to leave and to make up something, basically to say that they weren't there. And basically, I did what I was told because I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. I was in fear for my life.
But no matter what Sierra says, the evidence against her is more than enough to charge her with Stephen's murder.
Not only did detectives have statements from Brittany, but they had the evidence of luminol all over the apartment.
Soon after Sierra's interrogation, DNA testing erases any hope that Stephen might still be alive.
The torso, without any doubt, belongs to Stephen.
However, the remainder of Stephen's body was never found.
We don't know what happened to the rest of Stephen. And as a family member or a friend of this guy, that's got to be a stake in the heart.
In February of 2019, after prosecutors have built an airtight case against her, Sierra pleads guilty to murder. But at her sentencing, she shows an appalling lack of remorse.
She did not care. She was like, yeah, I did it, and so what?
She's in the courtroom, no remorse. She's unfazed. What is wrong with this woman?
She got sentenced to 45 years.
The sentence is a bitter disappointment for Stephen's friends and family.
I felt like she could have got more time. She really should have got death.
That's how I felt at that time. But I've grown to understand the power of forgiveness. I have no place to want revenge.
So instead of vengeance, Stephen's friends focus on remembering the man Sierra took from them.
The way I'm living and the way I'm looking at life, it's because of him. He made me believe more in myself and understand that, I can be more than what I thought I was.
He was just really, really a good guy. And I was happy and blessed to have him in my